Sing this and I'll marry you, the billionaire's son mocked. He dared the invisible maid's daughter with an impossible song. He expected humiliation, but her voice froze everyone. She is a ghost, cleaning the halls of an elite academy where she is an invisible scholarship student. By 5 a.m., she sings in the empty, dark auditorium. By 7 p.m., she mops the floors. Her life is a quiet cycle of service, driven by her mother's piling medical bills. Then, one word spoken out of turn shatters her silence. In front of the entire class, the school's billionaire heir rips an impossible piece of music from a book and throws it at her. "Sing this at school," he mocks, "and I'll marry you." The students raise their phones, ready to record the humiliation. They expect her to break. They have no idea they just handed her a weapon. Her gift was a secret, wrapped in a life of silent work. But a hidden talent cannot be quiet forever. It only waits for the right moment to be heard. The insult echoed in the high, sunlit halls of Summit Ridge Academy. It was Tuesday morning, third period. The class was Advanced Music Theory, a room filled with the sons and daughters of the city's elite. They sat in expensive, casual clothes, discussing complex compositions with an easy, careless confidence. In the back row, Eliza Mayhew sat perfectly still. She was silent. She did not belong here. Eliza was a ghost in a worn, second-hand uniform. She was present only because of a long-forgotten scholarship fund, a fund that barely covered her books. Mrs. Evelyn Croft, the department head, pointed to the large screen at the front of the room. On it was the sheet music for Der Hollerach. It was the famous, furious aria from Mozart's The Magic Flute. "This," Mrs. Croft announced, her voice sharp, "is the pinnacle of the coloratura soprano. It is a test of vocal agility and deep emotional power. Few professionals in the world can truly master it." A hand went up. It belonged to Carter Pendleton III. "Mrs. Croft," Carter said. His voice was smooth and lazy. He did not bother to stand. "Come on. No high school student can actually sing that. It's just screeching. It sounds like a cat in a blender." The class laughed. It was the laugh of a crowd that knew who its leader was. Carter Pendleton III was the son of a billionaire. His family's name was carved in granite on the new gymnasium. He was tall, handsome, and moved with an arrogance that came from a life without consequences. He had never been told no. "It's not screeching," a quiet voice said from the back. Every head turned. 24 faces all at once. Eliza Mayhew's face burned a deep, painful red. She had spoken without thinking. Her hands were instantly clammy. Carter's eyes narrowed. He did not know her name. He only knew her as the girl who sometimes wiped down tables in the cafeteria. The girl he passed in the hall. The one who always looked down. "I'm sorry?" Carter challenged. A cruel, handsome smile played on his lips. He was enjoying this. "What did you say?" "I said, it's not screeching," Eliza repeated. Her voice was trembling, but it was clear. "People mistake the high F's for noise, but they're not. They are the climax of the Queen's rage. It's pure fury. It's supposed to be sharp. It's supposed to hurt." The silence in the room was heavy. Mrs. Croft looked deeply annoyed by the interruption. She did not like students who spoke out of turn, especially not scholarship students. Carter's smile widened. This was new. This was entertainment. He stood up. He walked to the front of the room, right past Mrs. Croft's desk. He picked up a different music book, a thick, dusty volume of obscure 20th century pieces. He flipped through it dramatically, making a show of his search. He stopped. He ripped a page from the book. The sound of the paper tearing was loud in the quiet room. Mrs. Croft gasped, but said nothing. Carter strode down the aisle. He tossed the sheet music onto Eliza's desk. It landed like a judgment. The music on the page was a nightmare. It was a dense, dark forest of notes, full of strange symbols and impossible leaps. "Fine," Carter laughed. The class joined in, a chorus of mockery. You know so much about music? You know so much about rage? He leaned in close. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper that everyone in the room could hear. You sing this at the Founders' Day competition. Sing this at school, and I'll marry you. The room exploded. Students pulled out their phones, eager to record Eliza's humiliation. Her face was pale, her blonde hair falling across her eyes. She stared at the impossible notes. The title was barely readable. Elegy for a Fading Star. Eliza Mayhew was not just a student. She was an invisible girl. She was at Summit Ridge on the Sergeant William Mayhew Memorial Scholarship. Her great-grandfather was a local war hero. Decades ago, the town had set up a small fund in his name. It was just enough to send one descendant to Summit Ridge, a token of old gratitude. Eliza was the first to ever use it. Her life was a world away from the luxury of her classmates. She lived with her mother, Sarah, in a small apartment over a dry cleaner. The constant smell of chemicals was the smell of home. Her mother was a maid. She worked 2 jobs, one of them cleaning the houses of families like the Pendletons. The medical bills piled up on the kitchen table. Sarah had a cough that never seemed to go away. Eliza's day did not start at 8 a.m. It started at 4:30 a.m. She would wake in the dark, dress in her faded blue work uniform, and walk to the academy. She would let herself in with a staff key. For 1 hour, from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m., the main auditorium was hers. It was empty. It was dark. The acoustics were perfect. This was her secret. This was her church. She would stand on the massive stage, a single ghost light illuminating her, and she would sing. She sang the songs her grandmother, Rose, had taught her. Her grandmother had been the one with the real talent. Grandma Rose used to sing opera while baking bread. Her voice had filled their tiny kitchen with joy and tragedy. Grandma Rose had passed away 2 years ago, but the music remained. It lived in Eliza's bones. Singing in the auditorium was the only time Eliza felt whole. The only time she felt brave. The only time she was not invisible. At 6 a.m., she would stop. She would change into her school uniform. Then she would head to the cafeteria. She would work the breakfast line, serving eggs to the same students who would ignore her in the halls. After her classes, she did not go home. She changed back into her work uniform. She mopped the floors. She scrubbed the tables. She cleaned the chalk from the boards. She stayed until 7 p.m., cleaning up the mess left by Carter Pendleton and his friends. She was a janitor, a cafeteria worker, a ghost. Carter Pendleton's life was very different. His father, Carter Sr., was a titan of industry. His world was one of expensive cars, weekend trips, and designer clothes. He was the king of Summit Ridge. His girlfriend, Brooke Covington, was the most popular girl in school. Carter was not truly evil. He was just careless. He was bored. Eliza Mayhew was a distraction, a moment of entertainment. He had made the cruel joke. By the time he got to his next class, he had already forgotten it. But Eliza could not forget. That evening, she was on her knees, scrubbing a stain from the hallway floor. The very hallway where he had humiliated her. The sheet music, Elegy for a Fading Star, was in the pocket of her work smock. It felt like it weighed 50 pounds. The humiliation burned in her chest. Sing this at school, and I'll marry you. The laughter, the phones, the look of pity from Mrs. Croft, which was worse than the laughter. Eliza finished her shift, her body aching. She walked home under the streetlights, the impossible music clutched in her hand. When she got to her apartment, her mother, Sarah, was asleep in a chair. The television was on, casting a blue light over the room. Sarah was still in her maid's uniform. She had been too tired to change. A new envelope from the hospital sat on the table. It was bright white and unopened. Eliza went to her room. It was barely bigger than a closet. She looked at the sheet music. It was a piece designed to break a singer. It was full of strange time signatures, sudden jumps in pitch, and lyrics in a language she didn't recognize. "He thinks I'm nothing," she whispered to the empty room. "They all do." She thought of her great-grandfather, Sergeant Mayhew. His portrait hung in the town hall. He had been awarded the highest honors for bravery. He had faced impossible odds and refused to back down. She thought of her grandmother, Rose. Her grandmother had a saying, "Your voice is a gift, Eliza. Don't let them keep it in the box." A slow, cold anger began to build in her. It was the same anger she had heard in the Queen's song. She looked at the music again. "He wants me to sing this," she thought. "He thinks I'll fail." She sat at her small desk, turned on her lamp, and began to work. The next day, the buzz in the school was all about the Founders' Day competition. A large, elegant banner was unfurled in the main hall. The Founders' Day Talent Competition Grand Prize, the Patron's Scholarship, a full 4-year scholarship to the Juilliard Conservatory. All expenses paid. Eliza stared at the poster. The Juilliard Conservatory. It was the best in the world. It was not just a school, it was a dream. A dream so far out of reach, she had never even dared to think it. This scholarship was not just about music, it was about escape. It meant no more mopping floors. It meant no more medical bills. It meant a future for her and her mother. It meant her mother could finally rest. It meant she could finally be seen. But there was a problem. The sign-up sheet was posted on the music room door, and at the bottom, in small print, it read, "Faculty sponsor signature required." Mrs. Croft would never sign. She would laugh in Eliza's face. There was only one other person she could ask. Mr. Robert Shaw. Mr. Shaw was the school's other music teacher. He was the opposite of Mrs. Croft. Where she was sharp, polished, and modern, he was old, weary, and smelled of dust and coffee. Mrs. Croft taught the elite advanced theory classes. Mr. Shaw taught music appreciation to students who just needed the credit. He had been at Summit Ridge for 40 years. He had seen generations of rich, spoiled children pass through his room. He was jaded. He was tired. He had also been in the back of the auditorium during the incident with Carter Pendleton. He had heard Eliza's quiet correction about Mozart, and he had heard Carter's cruel reply. Eliza found him in his music room after school. It was a small, cluttered room in the basement. He was alone, sorting through a cabinet of old vinyl records. "Mr. Shaw," Eliza said. Her voice was small. He grunted, not looking up. "What is it?" I need a signature for the Founders' Day competition. I need a faculty sponsor." Mr. Shaw stopped sorting. He turned, very slowly, and looked at her. He was a tall man, stooped by time. His eyes were sad. "You're Eliza Mayhew, the girl from Mrs. Croft's class." "Yes, sir." "The girl Carter Pendleton made that wager with." Eliza's face burned. "It's not about him, sir. It's about the scholarship." "The Patron's Scholarship?" Mr. Shaw let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Child, do you have any idea what you're asking? That's not for people like, well, it's not for a beginner." "I'm not a beginner," Eliza said quietly. "Oh, really? Have you had tutors, private lessons, vocal coaches from New York?" "No, sir. I taught myself. My grandmother, she taught me." "You taught yourself," he repeated. He sighed and sat down at the dusty grand piano. "This competition is a Shark Tank. Mrs. Croft is the head judge. She's already chosen her winner. Brooke Covington, probably. Or Carter himself. They will eat you alive." "I don't care," Eliza said, her voice gaining strength. "I have to try. My great-grandfather didn't back down. I won't either." Mr. Shaw looked at her, a flicker of something new in his eyes. "William Mayhew? You're one of his?" "He was my great-grandfather." Mr. Shaw was silent for a long moment. He remembered the stories. Everyone in town did. Sergeant Mayhew was a legend. "All right," he said, his voice rough. "You want my signature? You have to earn it." I will not sign my name to a joke. I will not let you be humiliated again. He placed his fingers on the piano keys. Sing this, he said. He played a simple ascending scale. Eliza took a deep breath. She centered herself. She thought of the empty auditorium at 5 a.m. She sang the scale. Mr. Shaw's hands froze on the keys. It wasn't just her pitch. It was perfect. It was her tone, her control. There was a richness, a texture to her voice that he had not heard in decades. It was raw, yes, untrained, but it was there. It was the sound of pure, undeniable talent. He played a more complex series of notes. A difficult arpeggio. She sang it back to him, flawlessly. He turned on the piano bench and truly looked at her for the first time. He saw the worn-out shoes, the faded uniform, the exhaustion in her eyes, and the fire. Good Lord, he whispered. How long? My whole life, sir. He grabbed a pen and scribbled his name on her form. The auditions are this Friday. It's not just me. Mrs. Croft and a guest judge from the school board will be there. What should I sing? Eliza asked. Mr. Shaw looked at the elegy for a fading star in her hand, the piece Carter had thrown at her. Not that, he said with a scowl. Not yet. That's a weapon. You don't bring a cannon to a knife fight. You bring a perfectly sharp blade. He rummaged through a stack of music. He pulled out a simple, beautiful piece by Sadi. Je te veux. This, he said. It's simple. It's elegant. There's nowhere to hide. They're expecting a child. You show them an artist. Eliza took the music. Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Don't thank me, he grumbled, turning back to his records. Just don't be terrible. Eliza walked home, her feet barely touching the pavement. The audition form was in her bag. Mr. Shaw's signature, a small dark blot of hope. The music for Je te veux was clutched in her hand. She entered her apartment quietly. The smell of steam and chemicals from the dry cleaner below was thick, but it was home. Her mother, Sarah, was at the small kitchen table, sorting a small mountain of coupons. The unopened hospital bill was still there, a white shark in a sea of grocery discounts. You're late, honey, Sarah said. She did not look up. She had a pencil behind her ear. I had to stay, Eliza said. She put the music down on the table. Sarah finally looked up. Her eyes were tired, with dark circles underneath. She saw the sheet music. What's this? It's for a school competition, the Founders' Day event. A competition? Sarah put the pencil down. Eliza, we don't have time for games. That school is for them, not for us. You have your work. You have your studies. It's not a game, Mom. Eliza's voice was firm but gentle. The grand prize. It's a scholarship, a full scholarship to the Juilliard Conservatory in New York. Sarah stopped. She stared at her daughter. Juilliard? She whispered. The name sounded foreign, like a place on a map she could not find. I have to try, Mom. Grandma rose. She would have wanted me to try. Sarah looked at her daughter. She saw the same stubborn set of the jaw that her own mother, Rose, had. She saw the same fire that Sergeant William Mayhew had in the old, cracked portrait at the town hall. Oh, Eliza, Sarah said, her voice breaking. She coughed, a dry, racking sound that shook her thin frame. Of course, you must try. Of course, you must. Eliza put her arms around her mother. It's okay, Mom. I'll make us breakfast. No, Sarah said, pulling away. She looked at the music. You practice. I'll make the toast. The next morning, the auditorium was cold. It was 4:45 a.m. Eliza stood on the stage, the single ghost light casting a pale circle around her. She opened the music for Je te veux. It was a simple, tender song, a song of longing. She began to sing. Her voice, at first, was small in the vast, dark space. She was singing for herself. She was singing for her mother. She was singing for her grandmother, Rose. She did not know that, in the back, in the deepest shadows of the last row, Mr. Shaw was standing. He had come in early, drawn by a small, nagging hope. He listened. He closed his eyes. The song was simple. Her voice was not. It was a clear, strong bell. It had none of the artificial polish of Mrs. Croft's other students. It was something real, something pure. He had heard voices like this only twice before in his 40-year career. Both times, they were on the great stages of Europe. He slipped out before she finished, his heart pounding with a feeling he had not felt in years. It was not just hope, it was fear. He was afraid of what Mrs. Croft would do to this girl. Friday came. The auditions were held in the small, formal recital room, not the main auditorium. The room was full of nervous energy. Students in crisp, expensive clothes paced the hall, whispering to each other. They clutched leather music folios. They hummed complex, showy passages. Brooke Covington was there, holding court by the windows. She was Carter Pendleton's girlfriend. She was beautiful, blonde, and wore her privilege like a royal robe. She planned to sing a difficult, flashy Italian aria. She saw Eliza standing alone by the water fountain. Eliza was in her school uniform. It was clean, but the cuffs were frayed. "I'm surprised they let the staff audition," Brooke said loudly to her friends. "What are you going to do? Mop the stage?" Her friends laughed. Eliza looked down, her face burning. She clutched her single sheet of music. "Eliza Mayhew," a voice called from the door. It was her turn. Eliza walked into the room. It was small and bright. 3 tables were arranged at the front. Mrs. Croft sat in the middle. She looked bored. Mr. Shaw sat on the left. He was staring at his pen. On the right sat Mrs. Helen Gable, a kind-looking woman with gray hair. She was from the school board. She smiled at Eliza. "Name and peace, dear," Mrs. Gable said. "Eliza Mayhew, sir, ma'am. I'll be singing Je te veux by Eric Satie." Mrs. Croft's pen clicked. "Satie? How quaint. A simple cafe song, not exactly conservatory level, is it?" "Just sing, Miss Mayhew," Mr. Shaw said, his voice a low grumble. The school's accompanist, a nervous young man, began to play the simple, rolling piano chords. Eliza took a breath. She closed her eyes. She was not in the room. She was on the dark stage at 5 a.m. She sang. The room changed. The air stilled. The accompanist's eyes went wide. He had been playing for the other students all day. They had been loud. They had been technically skilled. This was different. Eliza's voice was not loud. It was intimate. It was clear as glass. She did not just sing the notes. She told the story. She sang of wanting, of longing, of a simple, desperate human need. Mrs. Croft's pen stopped clicking. She sat up, her eyes narrowed. This was not the mousy, invisible girl from her class. Mrs. Gable had tears in her eyes. She was thinking of her late husband. Mr. Shaw looked at the floor, a small, secret smile on his face. The song ended. The last note hung in the air, a perfect, shimmering thread. Silence. Eliza opened her eyes. She was terrified. "Well," Mrs. Croft said, clearing her throat. She was angry. This was not part of the plan. This girl had no right to be this good. "Your French is acceptable, but the piece is far too simple. It shows no real range." "I disagree, Evelyn," Mrs. Gable said. Her voice was gentle, but firm. "That was the most honest piece of music I have heard all day. Your control, Eliza, it's breathtaking." "She has talent," Mrs. Croft said, as if it were a disease. "But she is untrained. Raw. She would be torn apart in the finals." "Then we should train her," Mr. Shaw said, finally looking up. It was the first time he had spoken. "That is what a school is for, isn't it?" Mrs. Croft stared at him. It was a challenge. "She's in," Mr. Shaw said, not to Mrs. Croft, but to Eliza. "You're in the competition. The finals are in 2 weeks. Be in my office, Monday, 4 p.m. Eliza nodded, unable to speak. She almost ran from the room. She stumbled into the hall, her heart a drum against her ribs. The news was out before she even got to her cleaning shift. Carter Pendleton was in the student lounge, playing a video game on the massive screen. His friends were draped over the leather sofas. "You are not going to believe this," Brooke Covington said. She stormed into the room, her face red with anger. "Whoa! What's wrong?" Carter said, not taking his eyes off the game. "That Maid," Brooke spat. "The janitor girl. Eliza. She's in the finals." Carter paused the game. He turned. "What are you talking about?" "She sang in the auditions. Old Shaw and that Gable woman, they put her through. Evelyn Croft is furious. She's going to sing in the Founders' Day competition." Carter was silent. He was thinking. "Wait," one of his friends, Mark, said. "Eliza? Eliza, isn't that the girl?" "The one from class," Carter said slowly. "The one I—" Mark's face lit up with a cruel grin. "The one you said you'd marry." The sing this at school girl. The lounge erupted in laughter. Carter's face darkened. His stupid, careless joke was now a public event. "And guess what she sang?" Brooke fumed. "Some stupid, simple French song. Not the monster piece you gave her. She chickened out. She's a coward and a fraud." Carter stood up. He was not laughing. He was annoyed. This girl was making him look stupid. "So she's in," he said, grabbing his backpack. "Good. Let her be. It'll be even more fun to watch her crash." "Where are you going?" Brooke demanded. "Music room," Carter said. "I'm in this competition too, remember?" "I actually have to go practice." He left. He was not just annoyed. He was something else. He couldn't put his finger on it. He thought of the girl in the class, the way she had looked at him. Not with fear, but with nothing. Like he was not even there. And then, her quiet voice. "It's not screeching." He had never been corrected before. Monday afternoon, Eliza knocked on the door of Mr. Shaw's basement office. "Come in," he grunted. The room was a mess of music scores, dusty instruments, and old coffee cups. Mr. Shaw was sitting at the piano. "You were good on Friday," he said. "Good enough." "Thank you, Mr. Shaw." "Don't thank me." "You embarrassed Mrs. Croft. She does not like being embarrassed. She will be coming for you in the finals." I don't understand." "The finals are not just a talent show, Eliza. They are a political fight. Mrs. Croft wants her student, Brooke, to win. It makes her department look good. You are a problem. You are an unpolished, unknown problem." "What do I do?" "You stop being unpolished," he said. He pointed to the piano. "You have 2 weeks. We are going to work. 4 a.m. in the auditorium for vocals. 4 p.m. in here for theory. You will eat, sleep, and breathe music. Your janitor job." "I can't quit," Eliza said, panicked. "My mother, we need the money." Mr. Shaw looked at her, his expression hard. He sighed. "Fine. Then you will be tired. You will work from 4 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day. Sergeant Mayhew did not quit. You will not either." "Yes, sir." He tapped a stack of music on the piano. "Vocal exercises, scales, breathing techniques. We are going to rebuild you from the ground up." Eliza nodded, her eyes fixed on the music. "One more thing," Mr. Shaw said. He reached under a pile of papers and pulled out a single, torn page. It was the Elegy for a Fading Star, the piece Carter had thrown at her. "Where did you get this?" Eliza whispered. "I found it in the trash bin outside the music room last week," Mr. Shaw said, his eyes cold. "I assume you threw it away." "It's impossible," she said. "The language, the notes. The language is Hungarian," Mr. Shaw said. "The music is by a composer who lost his entire family in the war. It's not a song. It's a scream. It's a howl of grief." He placed the music on the stand in front of her. "Carter Pendleton meant it as a joke. He gave you a nuclear bomb and dared you to light the fuse." I can't sing this, Eliza said, staring at the dense, angry notes. No, you can't, Mr. Shaw agreed. You are not ready. Your voice would be shredded by the second page. You don't have the technique, and you don't have the rage. I have the rage, Eliza said, so quietly he almost missed it. Mr. Shaw looked at her. He saw the fire again, banked low. Good, he said. We'll do the sati for the competition. It's safe, it's beautiful. You will win the scholarship with that. He tapped the elegy with one long finger. But we will practice this. We will practice this in secret. We will practice this for you, not for them, not for the scholarship. We will practice this for your grandmother. For my grandmother? Yes, Mr. Shaw said. Talent like yours is a gift from God, Eliza. But it is also a responsibility. You are responsible for every note. This is the work. And so, the work began. The next 2 weeks were a blur. Eliza Mayhew's life became a sharp, repeating pattern of exhaustion and music. Her alarm clock buzzed at 4 a.m. The air in her small room was cold and dark. She would dress in layers, pull on her stocking cap, and walk through the silent sleeping town to the academy. At 4:30 a.m., Mr. Shaw would be waiting at the auditorium door. He was always there first, a large thermos of black coffee in his hand. Good morning, Miss Mayhew, he would grumble. Let's see if you still have a voice. The work was not glorious. It was not like the movies. It was hard, repetitive, and often boring. It was breathing. Breathe from your diaphragm, he would shout from the back row. Not your chest! I want to see the note, not hear it. Support it. Pretend you are Sergeant Mayhew holding up a collapsing bridge. It was posture. Your spine is a column of steel. The music rests on top of it. Do not slouch. Slouching is for amateurs. It was scales, endless scales, up and down, over and over, pushing her range by 1/2 step at a time. He was strengthening her voice, turning it from a beautiful, raw instrument into a refined, powerful tool. Again, and again, Miss Mayhew. The note must be your servant, not your master. At 6:30 a.m., he would nod. That will do. Go serve the eggs. She would run to the locker room, change into her cafeteria uniform, and work the breakfast line. She watched Carter Pendleton and Brooke Covington walk by, laughing, grabbing bacon without making eye contact. Then, a full day of classes. She was a good student, but she found her mind drifting from calculus to musical theory. At 3:30 p.m., her last class ended. She did not go to the basement. She went to the janitor's closet. She cleaned the classrooms. She mopped the hall where Brooke had laughed at her. She emptied the trash from the music room where Mrs. Croft was giving Brooke a private lesson. She could hear Brooke's voice through the door. It was a powerful, technically brilliant soprano. She was singing a flashy, difficult aria from an Italian opera. It was full of high notes and fast, complicated runs. It was designed to win. Eliza's hands tightened on the mop handle. At 5 p.m., her cleaning shift ended. Her back ached. Her hands were red and raw from the cleaning chemicals. She walked down to the basement. Mr. Shaw would be waiting in his small, cluttered office. You're late, he'd say. I had to clean Mrs. Croft's room. Good. Humility is good for the artist. Sit. This was the other lesson. This was not about the Sati song. He did not even let her practice it. The Sati is a lullaby, he said. You can sing that in your sleep. This is where you learn. He would put the elegy for a fading star on the piano. At first, it was a disaster. The music was a dark, tangled forest. The Hungarian lyrics felt like stones in her mouth. The notes were unpredictable. They jumped from a low growl to a high, piercing wail. I can't, she said, her voice cracking, on the third day. It's too much. It hurts. Of course it hurts, Mr. Shaw snapped. He was not a kind teacher. He was a demanding one. The man who wrote this had just lost his home, his wife, and his child. He wrote this, and then he never wrote music again. Do you think it is supposed to be pretty? You are not singing notes, Eliza. You are singing the sound of a life ending. He pointed to her. You told me you had the rage. I don't see it. I see a polite girl trying not to make a mistake. I am trying, Eliza said, her frustration boiling over. Trying is not good enough. What do you know of rage? Of loss? What makes you angry, Eliza Mayhew? What? He pushed. That you have to work? That you have no money? That your mother is sick? That those children upstairs treat you like furniture? Please, stop. That they laugh at you? Mr. Shaw stood up, his voice rising. That Carter Pendleton, a boy with a $10,000 watch and a $2 soul, dared you to sing this? He thinks you are a joke. He thinks your life is a joke. I hate him! Eliza screamed. The words tore out of her throat. The room was suddenly silent. The single bare bulb on the ceiling hummed. Eliza was breathing hard. She was shaking. Mr. Shaw sat down. He was calm. Good, he said quietly. The human voice is just a box of air. It is the emotion that makes it an instrument. Now, let's look at the second page. Eliza looked at the music. The notes were not just notes anymore. They were words she had been too afraid to say. She took a breath. She sang. It was not a song. It was a controlled scream. It was the sound of the medical bills on the table. It was the sound of Brooke's laughter. It was the sound of her mother coughing in the next room. It was the most honest, powerful sound she had ever made. She got through the first 2 pages before her voice gave out. She was sweating. She was crying. Mr. Shaw handed her a glass of water. His hands were steady. Now, he said, we know you can. We will do this every day. We will build your strength. You will control this fire. You will not let it control you. This is our secret. This is for you. Yes, sir, she whispered. She stumbled home that night after 7 p.m. The apartment was dark, except for the blue light of the television. Sarah, her mother, was asleep in her chair. She was still in her maid uniform. Eliza went to wake her, to tell her to go to bed. She saw an envelope on the table. It was from the hospital. It was bright red. Final notice. Eliza's blood ran cold. She picked it up. She tore it open. The amount listed inside made her feel dizzy. It was an impossible number. It was more money than their apartment, their car, everything they had ever owned. Mom? Eliza whispered, shaking her mother's shoulder. Sarah woke up with a gasp, her hand flying to her chest. Eliza? Honey? What time is it? Mom, Eliza said, holding up the letter. Why didn't you tell me? Sarah looked at the letter and her face crumpled. The strong, proud woman who had raised Eliza was gone. In her place was a terrified, sick woman. I didn't want to worry you, Sarah cried, her voice a dry whisper. Not with your competition. I thought I could... I don't know. I thought I could ask for more time. More time? Eliza said. Mom, this is... I know, Sarah said. They said if we don't pay something, they won't continue the treatments. Eliza stared at the red letter. This was not about a scholarship anymore. This was not about Juilliard. This was about her mother's life. The Juilliard Scholarship. The Patron Scholarship. It came with a cash prize for educational and living expenses. A prize large enough to cover this bill. This was no longer a competition. It was a rescue. Go to bed, Mom, Eliza said. Her voice was calm. It was a strange, cold calm. I will handle this. Honey, how? We can't. I will handle it, Eliza repeated. You just rest. You just have to rest. She helped her mother to bed. She closed the door. She went to the kitchen and looked at the red letter. She thought of the elegy for a fading star. She thought of the rage Mr. Shaw had demanded. It was here. It was cold and bright and pure. The next day, the school was buzzing. It was the day of the Founders' Day final competition. The auditorium was filling up. Parents in expensive suits and jewelry found their seats. Students were dressed in their best. The entire school board was there. In the front row sat Carter Pendleton Sr., a hard, imposing man. Backstage, it was chaos. Brooke Covington was warming up in a corner, her personal vocal coach beside her. She was wearing a stunning, custom-made red dress. She looked like a professional. Carter Pendleton was pacing in the hall looking annoyed. He was also competing, playing a brutally difficult piano piece. He kept looking at his phone. Eliza was in a small, empty dressing room. It was the one usually used for storage. Mr. Shaw knocked and entered. He was wearing an old, threadbare tuxedo. Eliza? She was standing in front of the mirror. She was wearing her grandmother's only good dress. It was a simple, dark blue dress from at least 20 years ago. She had washed and ironed it. It was clean, but it was old. "I look like a ghost," Eliza said. "You look like an artist," Mr. Shaw said. "You look like your grandmother. You look like Sergeant Mayhew's relative. You have a backbone of steel." He handed her a small, folded piece of paper. "What's this?" "My notes," he said. "Remember, breathe, support, tell the story. The song is Je te veux. It is a song of longing. Sing it to them. Make them remember what it is to want something." "I can do this," she said. "I know you can." He paused. "Are you nervous?" "Yes," she said. "I'm terrified." "Good. Nerves are energy. Use it. Don't let it use you." He turned to leave. "Mr. Shaw," he stopped. "Thank you." "Don't thank me, Miss Mayhew," he grumbled. "Just don't be terrible." He left. Eliza took a deep breath. She could hear the muffled sound of the crowd. She could hear Mrs. Croft acting as the master of ceremonies introducing the first act. Eliza walked out to the hallway backstage. Carter Pendleton was there, leaning against the wall. He saw her. He was not used to seeing her in a dress. He was not used to seeing her out of her uniform, either the school's or the janitor's. "So," he said, trying to sound casual. "The maid. You're actually going through with this." Eliza looked at him. She was not the same girl he'd mocked in class. She was not afraid of him. She was not afraid of anyone. "Yes," she said. "I am." Carter was taken aback by her calm. He had expected her to be a wreck. "That song you're singing," he said. "The Sadie. It's a simple piece. You're not going to win against Brooke with a simple song." "It's not about winning against Brooke," Eliza said. "Then what's it about?" Eliza thought of the red letter on her kitchen table. It's just something I have to do." Carter looked at her. He saw the dark circles under her eyes. He saw the strength in her jaw. The prickle of guilt he had felt before was now a sharp, uncomfortable jab. "That joke I made," he said, his voice suddenly low. "In class. About marrying you." "I remember," Eliza said. Her voice was cold. "It was stupid. I was bored. It doesn't matter, Carter," she said. "It does," he said, and he was surprised at his own intensity. "Brooke, she's been telling everyone. They're all waiting. They're waiting to see you sing the elegy. They think this is all a big joke." Eliza's eyes narrowed. "What?" "Brooke told everyone that the Marry Me joke was about the Sadie song, that I dared you to sing that simple song, and if you did, you were just trying to get my attention." Eliza felt the blood drain from her face. Brooke had twisted it. She had turned Eliza's one chance into a pathetic, desperate grab for a rich boy's attention. "They're not laughing at me, Eliza," Carter said. "They're laughing at you." The stage manager called a name. "Brooke Covington? You're on deck!" Brooke swept past them, her red dress rustling. "Wish me luck, Carter," she cooed. She shot a look at Eliza. "Try not to get mop water on the stage, dear." Brookie walked out. Eliza was left in the hallway. The cold rage from the basement was back. Carter saw the look on her face. "Eliza?" "I'm sorry." "Eliza Mayhew." The stage manager called. "You're next." Eliza looked at Carter. "You want to hear the elegy for a fading star?" she whispered. "You have no idea what you're asking for." She turned and walked toward the stage, leaving him alone in the hall. Brooke Covington swept onto the stage to a wave of applause. The red dress shimmered. She looked every bit the star. She was singing a modern, furiously complex piece, chosen by Mrs. Croft to highlight her technical precision. It was full of fast, staccato notes and jarring leaps. Brooke was a flawless machine. She hit every note. Her pitch was perfect. Her timing was robotic. It was a brilliant performance. It was also completely empty. There was no heart. It was just a series of difficult sounds. She finished, striking a dramatic pose. The crowd, made up of her parents' friends, erupted in loud, polite applause. Mrs. Croft, at the judges' table, was beaming. Brooke curtsied and walked off stage, gliding past Eliza. "Good luck," Brooke whispered, her voice full of ice. "Try not to bore them to death with that antique lullaby." "And now," Mrs. Croft's voice boomed, "our final contestant, Miss Eliza Mayhew. She will be singing Je te veux." Her tone was dismissive. Eliza walked out. The change was immediate. After the glittering red dress, Eliza's simple dark blue dress made her look like a shadow. She looked small and plain. A murmur went through the crowd. This was the janitor girl? The one Carter Pendleton had joked about? Eliza walked to the center of the stage. She did not look at the crowd or the judges. The accompanist began the gentle, rolling chords of the Sadie song. Eliza took a breath. She thought of her mother's face, the red letter, Brooke's cruel whisper, Carter's words. "They're laughing at you." The music was soft. Eliza sang the first note. But something was wrong. Her voice was thin. It was shaking. She was terrified. The weight of the hospital bill, the exhaustion, the humiliation, it was all crashing down on her. "Breathe," she heard Mr. Shaw's voice in her head. "Tell the story." She tried the second line, but her voice cracked. A tiny, audible break. In the audience, Brooke's friends began to snicker. Mrs. Croft, at the judges' table, leaned over to the school board member and whispered something, a small, triumphant smile on her face. Eliza was failing. She looked out, her eyes blurred with panic. She saw Carter in the third row, his face pale. He wasn't laughing. He looked ashamed. She saw Mr. Shaw in the back, standing by the door. He was staring at the floor. His shoulders slumped. Defeated. He had believed in her, and she was letting him down. That single thought cut through the panic. Number. I will not. The accompanist was playing more softly, trying to help her. Eliza held up one hand. The pianist stopped playing. The auditorium went dead silent. 1,000 people held their breath. Eliza had stopped the show. Mrs. Croft started to rise. "Miss Mayhew, is there a—" "I'm sorry," Eliza said. Her voice was quiet but clear, and it carried. I can't sing this song." A gasp went through the crowd. This was the final humiliation. Brooke, in the wings, smiled. "I can't sing this song," Eliza repeated, her voice stronger. "Not because I don't know it, but because it's not the truth." Mrs. Croft was furious. "Miss Mayhew, you will sing your chosen piece, or you will be disqualified." "Then I am disqualified," Eliza said. She turned, but not to leave. She walked to the accompanist. She bent and whispered something. He looked at her, his eyes wide with shock. He shook his head. I don't have the music for that. I can't." "It's okay," Eliza whispered. "I don't need it." She walked back to the center of the stage. She was no longer a ghost. She was a soldier. "Mrs. Croft," Eliza said, her voice like steel. "Mr. Pendleton." She looked directly at Carter. "A few weeks ago, Mr. Pendleton made a joke. He gave me a piece of music. He dared me to sing it. He told me if I sang it at school, he would marry me. The crowd erupted. The whispers were a roar. Carter sank in his seat, his face burning. Carter Sr., in the front row, turned and stared at his son with ice in his eyes. It was a joke, Eliza continued, her voice cutting through the noise. A cruel joke. He and his friends and all of you thought a girl like me, a girl who mops your floors, could never sing it. You thought I was a joke. She took a deep, shuddering breath. She was perfectly, terribly still. He was right, she said. It is an impossible piece of music. It's called Elegy for a Fading Star. It's about rage and loss and grief. She closed her eyes. And it is the only song I have left to sing. And then she sang, a cappella, with no music, nothing but her voice in the silent auditorium. It was not the sati. It was not pretty. It was a low, guttural note, a sound that seemed to come from the earth. It was the elegy. The first sound was so shocking, so full of pain, that people in the front row flinched. Mrs. Croft's face went white. This was not music. This was a violation. Mr. Shaw, in the back, stood up, his hand gripping the doorframe. His eyes were wide. He had told her she wasn't ready. Eliza sang of the lost home. Her voice was not a clear bell. It was a raw, powerful, wounded thing. It was her mother's cough. It was the red hospital letter. It was every time she had been ignored or laughed at. She was not just singing the notes. She was the notes. She reached the first impossible leap, the part Mr. Shaw had said would shred her. Eliza's voice did not just hit the note. It attacked it. It was a controlled, perfect scream. A note of such pure, focused rage that it seemed to shake the lights. The accompanist, forgotten at his piano, was crying. In the third row, Carter Pendleton was rigid. This was his fault. This creature on the stage, this thing of fire and sound. He had created her. He had given her the weapon. And now, she was using it to burn the world down. Eliza's voice built. She was in the heart of the piece, the part that was just a dense, dark forest of grief. Her voice broke, but it broke on purpose. It cracked and splintered, a perfect mirror of the composer's broken heart. This was not a girl singing. This was a woman breaking, and it was the most beautiful, terrifying thing anyone in that room had ever seen. She reached the final passage. The music called for a soft, fading note, but Eliza did not fade. She gathered every last bit of her breath. She thought of her great-grandfather, Sergeant Mayhew. She thought of her grandmother, Rose. She thought of her mother. She sang the final note. It was not a whisper. It was a roar. A single, sustained, crystal-clear note of pure defiance. It was the note of the Queen of the Night. It was the note of a warrior. It filled the auditorium. It pushed against the walls. It vibrated in the bones of every person. She held it. 1 second, 2, 5, 10. She held it until there was no air left in her body. And then, silence. Eliza stood, her chest heaving, sweat and tears rolling down her face. She had given them everything. She had nothing left. No one moved. No one clapped. No one breathed. The silence was a solid, living thing. It stretched for a minute. Then, from the back of the room, a single, rough voice. "Good God," Mr. Shaw whispered. He was the first to clap. A single, stunned clap. Then, from the front row, Carter Pendleton Sr. stood up. The billionaire. He looked at his son, then at Eliza. He, too, began to clap. And then, the auditorium exploded. It was not applause. It was a standing, screaming, crying ovation. People were on their feet, shouting. It was a roar. Eliza Mayhew just stood there and let it wash over her. Mrs. Croft was frozen, her face a mask of disbelief. The school board member was crying. Carter Pendleton III was still in his seat. He was not clapping. He was staring at the stage, his world completely tilted off its axis. He had made a joke, and she had turned it into a masterpiece. 1 week later, the small apartment above the dry cleaner was full of boxes. The red hospital bill was on the table. Stamped across it, in big black letters, were 2 words: paid in full. The Founders' Day competition had been a disaster for the judges. After Eliza's performance, there was no choice. The elegy was all that mattered. The patron's scholarship was hers. The Juilliard Conservatory. The cash prize had arrived in her mother's bank account 2 days later. "Eliza, are you ready?" Her mother, Sarah, called. Sarah's voice was different. The cough was still there, but the sound was lighter. It was the sound of hope. "Almost, Mom." Eliza was packing the last of her grandmother's things. She picked up a small framed photo of Rose. There was a knock on the open apartment door. Eliza turned. Carter Pendleton was standing there. He was not in his designer clothes. He was in simple jeans and a t-shirt. He looked smaller. "Hi," he said. He was holding a small, awkward-looking envelope. "Hi," Eliza said. She did not smile. She was waiting. "My father," Carter said. He grounded me for the next year. He took my car, my phone, my credit cards." "I'm sorry to hear that," Eliza said. "No, don't be," Carter said, looking at his shoes. "It's the first smart thing he's ever done. He's making me get a job here, at the dry cleaner downstairs, as an intern." Eliza almost smiled. "An intern?" "Yeah." He looked up. His eyes were clear. The lazy arrogance was gone. "I heard you sing. That day, I've never—" He couldn't finish. He held out the envelope. "This is for you. From my father," he said. "He said Sergeant Mayhew's family should never have had to struggle. He set up a new fund. For your mother. For her treatments. Forever." Eliza took the envelope, but she did not open it. "And this," Carter said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a single torn page. It was the elegy for a fading star, the page he had ripped from the book. "I found this," he said, "in the trash. I think you should have it." Eliza looked at the impossible music. She looked at the boy in front of her. "Carter," she said. "Yeah? I'm not going to marry you." A small, genuine smile touched Carter's lips. "Yeah," he said, his voice rough. I figured that. I don't think I could handle it." Eliza took the music from him. "Good luck, Carter Pendleton," she said. "Good luck, Eliza Mayhew," he replied. He turned and walked down the stairs. Eliza stood in the empty room. She heard a car horn. It was Mr. Shaw. He was driving them to the airport. New York was waiting. She put the music in her bag. She took one last look at the small, cramped apartment. She thought of the empty auditorium at 5 a.m., the ghost light, the silence. Her gift was a secret, wrapped in a life of silent work. But a hidden talent cannot be quiet forever. Eliza Mayhew smiled. She picked up the last box, turned off the light, and closed the door. It was time to be heard. And that's where we'll leave Eliza, on her way to New York. Her grandmother's dress packed with the song of defiance that changed her life. I hope this story was a good escape, whether you were winding down for the night or just taking a quiet moment for yourself. What part of Eliza's journey hit you the hardest? Drop a comment below. I love reading your thoughts, and if you'd like to be part of this community, please consider liking and subscribing. It lets us know you're out there listening and helps us keep these stories coming. Thanks for spending this time with me.